On today's show, Audi gives us a closer look at its upcoming A6, Australia to get V3 SuperChargers, and we need to talk about this bloke. G'day, my name's Chris and I cover electric vehicles, renewables and a lot more from an Australian perspective. If you're new to the channel or you actually watch this show regularly, do consider subscribing, it's free. And if you want to go to the next level of support, think about joining us over here on Patreon, where you get early access news, polls, behind the scenes and a lot more that you just don't get here. And I want to thank my producers, Alan Bird, Ashley Hill, Nigel Ferrier and Tessa and the Gong. Okay. I'm going to start today's show by getting on my soapbox, and that can only mean one thing. Last week we saw Earth Day celebrated the world over, with lots of businesses potentially greenwashing, individuals doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and some leaders lying and promising to support the fossil fuel buddies, increase emissions, and warm the planet a lot. Here's a high-level summary. On Wednesday last week, our government committed more than $1 billion in funding gas-based hydrogen, carbon capture, storage. Whilst one is welcome, carbon capture, it's about $30 million they're going to invest in this and put it into the underground, into the sea and stuff like that. It is a proven technology, but on a dollar per dollar basis, it's actually better to invest it into solar, wind, hydro, things that actually don't cause any pollution in the first place. Yeah, definitely a great idea. There are many ways you can create hydrogen, but what he's proposing here is using gas. And we all know that gas is a very bad fossil fuel that not only produces fugitive emissions in its production, but also is very good at trapping heat in our planet, which has to be stopped as soon as it possibly can. If you want to know more about this subject, please do check out my video up here where I do a deeper dive into carbon capture and gas. And let me just say, it ain't good news, folks. Turning back to Scott Morrison, on Thursday, like just this last Thursday, Earth Day, he listened to multiple leaders speak about how they were going to be reducing their impact on the world of ours. The United States of America is aiming to reduce 50 to 52% of its emissions by 2030. The UK, 78%, Japan, 46%, and Canada to 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. Importantly, China and South Korea have also added to the many voices around the world saying that they will either phase down coal consumption by 2030 or halt financing of any new coal power plants. Remember this line. Our PM said this: "Future generations will thank us not for what we have promised, but what we will deliver. And on that score, Australia can always be relied upon." To which he then detailed some numbers which were so crooked, misrepresented and overinflated that it makes us look bad. Expertly detailed in several articles by Keith and Joshi on their Renew Economy website, links are below. Here's some great little nuggets that I want you to take away and make sure you speak to friends and family about. On the already we've reduced our emissions by 90% of 2005 levels, the Department of Emissions projections from December 2020 report that it's actually only 16.6%. He also rattled off his favourite line, which I think he's memorised because if you watch his address, you'll note that he gets off topic or mixes things up a bit. So maybe his teleprompter was broken? But what he said on the world stage, plus last week at Monday's Business Council of Australia dinner, was that domestic emissions have already fallen by 36% from 2005 levels. No. Best case scenario, we're at 23.3%. And one more for today's show, and getting back to where I started, to say that Australia is beating the world and delivering on its targets is just a huge lie. It's embarrassing, and he should be ashamed for lying to world leaders, lying to the Australian people, some of whom will believe his lies and not question them, and scrap his plans to support gas hydrogen. It's so infuriating. And look, in a moment, I'll get off my soapbox, but please, look, do go and read these articles below by Kit and Joshi and inform your friends, family, work colleagues, anyone, just how badly we are actually doing about reducing our impact on the environment, how we're failing on reducing our emissions, and how our Prime Minister and our government is hell-bent on warming the planet of ours. Sticking with carbon emissions, climate change, and technology that supports clean green ways to decarbonise the world, I want to talk about Toyota's comment about not electrifying their fleet. Detailed on Car Advice, Sean Hanley, the Sales and Marketing Director for Toyota Australia, said that despite this week's focus on pure electric cars, I'm going to get to that, folks, we cannot achieve carbon neutrality simply by turning all our cars into pure electric vehicles. 1/4 of the world's CO2 emissions today come from electricity generation. Even by 2040, more than half of the world's electricity is expected to be generated by fossil fuels. Therefore, if all cars were to become pure electric vehicles, the demand for electricity would increase and carbon neutrality could be a long way off. These comments are nothing new, and we have heard Toyota Japan say something similar before. Just maybe rewind back to this point in the episode where I detailed how most countries of the world have got plans to significantly reduce their impact on the environment by decarbonising everything in which they do, and how they're converting their power industries to renewable power. Before I go into a little bit of myth busting, shall we say, Sean, please know that even in Australia, with our mix of fossil fuels, driving an electric vehicle fueled by it results in 40% less emissions compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle. Why? Because you don't have to mine the oil, pump the oil, ship the oil, refine the oil, transport petrol, push it into cars. Getting a car to move involves a great deal of energy, and by going electric, you remove a massive section of that supply chain and in turn remove a lot of emissions. So, once again, you've got someone in a position of power who will influence what type of EVs we get in Australia by spruiking garbage that people will gobble up. We need to remember that this FUD around electric vehicles and how that if everyone in my street plugged their EVs in at once, we'll have blackouts. It's complete and utter garbage. In fact, industry supports everyone get electric vehicles because it will help stabilise the grid. So, Sean, let me debunk you for a sec. The International Energy Agency estimates that global electricity from renewables will grow from 25% in 2019 to more than 50% by 2030. A UK study found that if all cars in the United Kingdom were electric, carbon emissions will be reduced by 12%. I think what is going on here is that Sean is just towing the line for Toyota company as a whole and supporting them and keeping their internal combustion engine business going for as long as they possibly can. In doing so, they will keep the complexity up of those cars, means that service costs are high for owners, running costs are high for owners, profits are up for the business. You get the idea. It's just a very bad business model, and I fear that Toyota is going to be left behind, and whilst the rest of the world introduces internal combustion engine bans and ask of car makers to ship to them cleaner and greener vehicles, well, let's face it, in Australia, we could still be getting garbage vehicles here because we are the Cuba when it comes to, getting the type of cars here. Sulfur content's up. We have no emission standards. We have no petrol standards. We have no targets for our climate. Yet, we have Toyota here who's basically just, I need to stop. Oh, and by the way, Toyota unveiled a concept EV, which it says will be one of 7 electric vehicles it will produce by the year 2025 for China. Time for a round of bites. Last week, the World Car Awards were announced and 2 electric vehicles came out winners. The Honda E took out the gong for World Urban Car. In this category, there was a total of 5 different cars with contenders such as the Hyundai i10 and i20, Toyota Yaris, and Honda Jazz. And the big one, the World Car Award, there was no less than 14 different cars, almost all of which were petrol or diesel variants. And this one went to Volkswagen's ID4. Congratulations, VW. This is great news and something I think we'll see more and more, whereby electric vehicles receive accolades and awards, beating out traditional electric petrol cars, that is. BYD officially released its e-Platform 3.0 for electric vehicles at the 2021 Shanghai Auto Show. This new platform, think of it like a skateboard design that underpins a car's frame comprising of batteries, motor and electrics, is what BYD claims to be smaller, lighter and stronger and lower energy in its consumption. Equipped with heat pump technology as standard, the e-Platform improves overall efficiency by 10%. The motors they're putting on this version will achieve a 0 to 100 km/h time in just 2.9 seconds. Additionally, battery size can be varied and provide a range up to 960 kilometers. Those living in remote communities of Australia with little to no charging infrastructure between places will no doubt be very happy with this range. What would you do if I told you you could buy an electric vehicle for $35,000? Impossible? Bridie Schmidt from The Driven reports that Nextport has plans to bring to Australia Chinese car makers BYD E2. Available in China since 2020, the older version of BYD's E2 has a 35.2 kilowatt-hour battery, 305 kilometers of range, and sells for about $18,000 in China. The updated model seen here has a claim range of 400 kilometers. What's not quite clear, but potentially there, is that BYD and Nextport, I think, is going to be bringing no less than 5 different electric models to Australia very soon. And no doubt this will help push down prices of electric vehicles in Australia. Warburtons, the UK's largest bakery brand, is rolling out its first 16-tonne, 100% electric truck. Seen here in Warburtons' orange livery, Renault DZE can cover up to 150 kilometers on a single charge and carry around 6 tons of bread and bakery products to multiple locations across London. No doubt, part of the switch to an electric truck is due to London's ultra-low emissions zone and the charges that go with that. So I'm glad that a bread company in collaboration with Renault have created this fully electric truck. The DZE is a 4x2 rigid, featuring box body with rear side door and tail lift by PPS Commercials. Powered by a 200 kilowatt-hour 600 volt lithium-ion battery, the permanent magnet motor delivers 185 kilowatts of power, 425 newton meters of torque. Of interest, ZE has a reduction gearbox that offers 2 forward speeds and 1 reverse. Maybe because when fully laden, this thing is heavy-ish for those electric motors. I'm not too sure. With a 22 kilowatt onboard AC charger that is capable of accepting a DC fast charge up to 150 kilowatts, this truck is yet another electric alternative, showing how commerce is supporting a shift to cleaner forms of transport. Audi has revealed more details about its 2023 Audi A6. Denoted as a concept car, this is actually nearly ready for production and has been promised to enter into production late 2022. Built on a completely new technology architecture called Premium Platform Electric, or PPE, which to me is extremely confusing because in healthcare we refer to PPE as personal protective equipment, gloves, gowns, that sort of stuff. This long sportsback looks pretty nice. Audi claims that this car has a drag coefficient of 0.22, which will help it achieve its 700 km WLTP range. So let's say real world 600 kilometers, which is still pretty good. Capable of 0 to 100 in less than 4 seconds, the Audi A6 will have a 100 kilowatt-hour battery. featuring large 22-inch wheels which have short overhangings, meaning cornering will be pretty good in this car. Internally, a flat cabin and wide body will no doubt be a great selling point. I've previously featured this car about its digital matrix LED light system and how it actually be capable of projecting not only certain portions of the road, think like corner illumination, not dazzling oncoming drivers and pedestrians. This also will enable drivers to do like a video game by projecting onto a wall whilst charging. It's pretty exciting stuff, and I can't wait to see it on our roads in Australia. Let's talk about Charging Australia. And today, I'm excited to share with you that Tesla Australia will be adding 23 new locations over the next 12 months. 23! Look for the grey supercharger icons on this map. You might see one opening near you. But with one important note. Tesla isn't always the fastest at rolling out superchargers in Australia. Just ask Nigel and Western Australian viewers. They've only got one. They've got one. It's a sore point. Don't bring it up with him. He'll get a rant. Hi, Nigel. The great thing about this rollout is that it's pushing away from the coastline, which is on the eastern seaboard. It's pretty well covered. Additionally, you can see down here in the southeast of the state of Victoria, it's going to enable a new route between Melbourne and Sydney. And sticking with the subject of superchargers, The Driven has revealed that V3, that's version 3 of the Tesla supercharger, is coming soon to Australia. These 1 megawatt units are capable of charging a Tesla at 250 kilowatts or 250 kilometers of additional range in about 10 minutes. And the exciting point here that I think almost all electric vehicle owners can appreciate is that no more sharing of power. You are one plug, you no longer have the A and B issue whatsoever. Each plug gets its own massive amount of power. It's pretty damn impressive, and I'm welcoming it to Australia, and it'll be great to see it near you. Alrighty, well that brings us to the end of another episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, you know what you can do. Subscribe, that really would be appreciated. Leave me a little comment. Think about putting those notifications on so that when I do put on something new, you can see it. Think about joining us over here on Patreon, and otherwise, please, you be good and you be green.